All right, so now we are going to talk about some typical things that you can look for in a set of variations by Mozart or Haydn or Beethoven, early Beethoven especially. And then on later, with someone like Brahms, who's very much influenced by the Viennese classical composers. And these are just some general ideas that you can be on the lookout for, which give a little bit of structure to theme variation in general. So, all right. Okay, so some typical features of a set of theme variations by a classical composer such as Mozart. So there are 5 things I'm going to present here. So what I want you to do, you can stop the video for a second. And if you'll go to MSlip, and if you will pull up a score of Mozart Kochel 331, which is the sonata in A major, and we're going to look at the first movement of that work. It's unusual among all the Mozart sonatas because it's the only first movement that's not in sonata allegro form. And so this is the sonata that has the final movement, which is actually in A minor. And it is a very famous movement that is entitled Turkish Rondo. So you may have heard that before. But this first movement is a great example of theme variation and shows the basic ideas of the classical approach. All right, so the theme is presented unadorned. We're going to pull up a recording here. And so again, this is a great pianist, Mitsuko Uchida. She's recorded all the Mozart sonatas for piano and also all the piano concertos and conducts from the keyboard. So she's just a brilliant musician. And so get that ready here. What you're going to hear is this theme that is presented. It is in 6/8. It has a lilting kind of quality to it. And so let's just take a listen to this. It's homophonic texture. You're going to hear that it's a homorhythmic type of relationship among the voices. They're all more or less moving in the same rhythm at the beginning. And the top line is the melody. And it doesn't really have any, very much as far as alter tones. You've got just really, I think, just one alter tone in the whole theme. So it's basically diatonic. And the first half cadence is on tonic. So the first phrase, and this is what you want to do at theme variation, is to analyze basically what's happening with the construction of the theme. And so it's, for the most part, 1 chord per measure. So the first measure is tonic, second measure is dominant, and you have half cadence at the end of the first phrase. It's shifted. And then second phrase is parallel to the first phrase. First two measures are exactly the same, but then the third and fourth measure are different. So you have a parallel period for part one, and then that is repeated. And then you have then a four-measure phrase at the beginning of the second part that then is a single phrase in length, and it does have a half cadence, and that's the point where it has that 5/5 harmony at the end of that first phrase of the second part. And then the third part restates the second phrase, and it has a two-measure extension at the end. So this one is, if you remember, this would be an example of incipient three-part song form, but it has a two-measure extension at the end. And so that makes it a little bit more unusual, but that is the basic form here. So let's listen to Mitsuko Uchida play this theme. There's the half cadence. Very simple. That's why I say unadorned. Something that can be embellished. She takes repeat. Okay, second half. See how the left hand has an Alberti bass? Gives a little contrast there with that third phrase, which is typical of incipient three-part song form. Now, second phrase is restated. And that has delayed cadence and two-measure extension. We'll listen for that then with each variation. He's going to do that every time. See, that's two measures that it supports it. Okay, here's variation one. A little chromaticism. Continue with 16th notes. Definitely is embellishing. Same basic progression. Dominant. There's a two chord. There's the last phrase. Okay, we're going to stop there. So what I want you to do, if you look at the second variation, then what's going to happen in the left hand is that Mozart presents triplet 16th notes. So he's gone from a basic unit of eighth notes to 16th notes to triplet 16th notes And so this is what you can look for at the beginning of a set of classical variations, is this animation of the rhythm. So, and these are progressively shorter subdivisions of the beat that are presented in each variation. So this is a short set, 6 variations in total. So he does that for the first 2 variations, progressively shorter subdivision of the beat. And then what he does in variation 3 is the next general thing that you can look for. And that would be presenting a variation that is in the opposite mode. So here we're in A major. So if you look at the score, then you'll see that in variation 3, that it shifts to A minor. And it's still the same basic chord progression, so still 1 chord per measure, and so forth. So that's another element. And then when you get to the end of the movement, the penultimate, so second to last variation, presents a variation that is a slow variation. Often you'll see adagio for that. And so if you look toward the end of the movement, you'll see that that is in variation 5. And so it still is in 6/8, and you still have the same harmonic rhythm of 1 chord per measure, but it's going twice as slow. So he has 32nd notes for the Alberti accompaniment on the left hand, but it takes twice as long to perform because of the tempo. So look for that at the very end of the set. And then the final thing that you can look for is that in the last variation, you can look for a tempo change to be the fastest. It also can change the meter. And very often it's the most virtuosic of the set. And so if you look at that 6th variation, you see it changes tempo to allegro. And the meter changes to common time, so 4/4. And you definitely have some virtuosic writing in it. It's, due to the tempo. It's not extremely virtuosic, but it ends the whole set with a, kind of flourish, brilliant kind of quality. So these are the things that you should know for the final. I'll ask you this question: what are some typical things that you expect in a set of theme variations by a classical composer, such as Mozart? And so you list these 5 different things. And you can see this in many, many different examples from Haydn, Mozart, and early Beethoven. All right, we will now talk about this late Beethoven piano sonata.